First, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me today.
Okay.
I know this is being recorded, so all of our community leaders, all of our advocates for the community, parents, teachers, grandparents will be able to view this later. So I'm excited to have the conversation with you today.
Thank you.
So you just shared that you are originally from Jacksonville, just right down the road. If you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and your experience that has led you up to this point and prepared you to sit on the school board for District 5. If you could give us the elevator pitch version.
Okay, yes. Basically, I am from Jacksonville, native, right down the street in Grand Park. Went to the public schools, Thomas Jefferson. Graduated from Paxson High School. Went to EWU. It was EWC then. I went off after I finished college, I went to the military, 30 years, 4 combat tours, pretty bad stuff. And it's what I did over there that gives me experience that I'm going to lead into. While in the military, I served on different commissions under the Obama administration, Public Service Recognition Week, and some under the Clinton administration. And I worked in civil governance. In civil governance, we actually helped build schools and put together infrastructure, working with Department of State personnel, Department of Agriculture, and foreign dignitaries and educators and leaders. When I retired from the military, I got picked up at Florida State College to work in adult continuing education. I also was an adjunct professor there. I also do mentorship program, the curriculum writer for Biscayne High School, that is a charter school to do life skills training for the young men there. And currently, I am the assessment coordinator for child care training. And what led me to the school board is, first of all, I talked to a number of teachers, and they were very dissatisfied. So I said, well, why don't you run? I asked 7 teachers, and they said, I don't want to get into that fight. So since I am a stakeholder, I have a grandson in the system. My kids went to public schools. I have 4 daughters, 2 boys, 6 grandchildren.
Wow.
I don't like what I'm seeing. I've been in the schools, and I said something needs to be done. And I have a wide range of operational experience in the military, looking at things from a much broader perspective rather than a narrow perspective. And I think that's what's needed on the school board, along with the experience of teaching. I was a track and field coach while in the military also.
Awesome. I am a former track athlete.
Oh,
former
wow.
being the key word there. Thank you for that. You mentioned in your preliminary questions, thank you for completing those, that you see the trend of parents removing their kids from Duval public schools. And you have a unique perspective from your military background. So what are your thoughts on the current climate of school closure, of school choice, and how it's impacting our public schools?
Okay, as far as the school, I'll take it one at a time. The school closure, I am not for closing schools. I'm not. However, when you dive into the financial aspect, a lot of things haven't been done right. And it wasn't through the Greens administration. It goes way back. This can has been kicked down for a long time, so there's no one person you can point at. But one of the biggest problems is the budget. They always say, Reggie, what about teachers' pay? Listen. The teachers' pay is a legislative process. That's not nothing the school board can do, with the exception of the $200 million that they approved through the legislature for incentive. I would like to see the teachers' pay elevated. But as far as the school closures, I know they're still in phase 1. And I think it's something that needs to be carefully looked at, because anytime you talk about closing the schools because of the population, this school has a population of 1,200, but there are only 600 in the school. When you merge these schools, filter men to one school, like a middle school, onto, say, Ed White, what I didn't see is the calculation of growth. If you look, as developers pretty much run the city, if you look at the apartments just popping up everywhere, huge complexes,
yes.
Has the population growth been included in that plan? Because now you put them together, you have a feeder, and now you have overcrowded schools. And then you have to talk about either building new schools or opening up schools. I think it's a problem that needs to be looked at. I am concerned about the data based on the master facilities plan that I looked at, and I'm glad the neighborhoods and the parents are very involved. I mean, that's a good thing. So right now, as far as looking at that, I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done before we do. I don't think anything should be closed yet until a really deep dive, including in transportation, a lot of things that they really didn't talk about as much. are looked at and implemented and have a plan B too, not just one. So I think that's what needs to happen.
Can you speak briefly about how school choice is impacting this?
School choice, decades ago, especially in the Black community, we were dissatisfied with the public schools. We said, our kids are not learning, we're in these bad schools. Why do other communities get to have good schools? So I think that's where, over the decades, school choice came in at. People wanted to have a choice. I am certainly not one to tell a parent, no, you're going to stay at this school, that's the only choice you have, and just dig in. That is not acceptable. I do believe in school choice. However, I believe there should be some strict guidelines. When the charter schools come into place, a school such as, I think, Biscayne, they work more parallel with the school board, not just an independent school. Because after all, you have kids that get in trouble, and these are the kids that go to that school because they want to give them a second chance because you don't want to throw them on the streets. I do think there is an impact, but what I want to know is the real impact. How much money really is being taken away? And when a kid goes to the charter school and they decide, I don't want my child in charter school anymore, that doesn't work, they have already paid out money. Where does that block fit in when that child goes back to the public school? I think legislative, they say there's nothing. The charter schools just have the money, and I think that's unacceptable. Yeah. They need to create legislation that says once that kid goes back to the public schools, that block of money needs to go back with them. So I think it does have an impact, but I don't know if it's that critical.
Okay, thank you for that. I want to, dig in there a little bit more. How do you plan to keep public schools an option and attractive for our neighborhood? So parents are pulling their kids out of public school, whether they return back later, but they're pulling them out for a reason. How do we make our schools more attractive in our neighborhoods?
Well, first of all, the public school have to look within themselves and say why are children leaving. Okay, this is a multifaceted look. Schools have to be improved. The public schools have got to rise in their level. If they're doing the academics, they have got to come up to an acceptable standard. Too many teachers are telling me, Reggie, these kids can't read. That's what parents are looking at. And that's the little dark thing that nobody really wants to talk about. They can't read, so people have a right to pull their children out. The marketing of public schools has to increase. The beautification of public schools has to increase. We have to show the public, this is why your child needs, because charter schools aren't going anywhere right now. And that's a whole nother story as to why. But we have to get to a point where we're showing the public, this is why the public schools are a better option. They have a wider range of options, including a wider range of programs, the trades, and those who want to go into academics. I don't know if you've ever seen this documentary called Waiting on Superman, a very good documentary about the history of public schools. I think that's something everybody should look at and tell you why we have gotten to this point. But beautifying the schools, bringing up the standards, giving better options, partnering with Florida State College because they have a lot of resources and programs that they cut out. Why? Because they don't have anybody. Partner with the schools and say, we can provide more trade options.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Tell me the name of that documentary again.
It's called Waiting on Superman.
Okay.
The excellent documentary on a history of our public schools.
Okay. Thank you. I want to change course here a little bit. How would you define in general DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging for our kids in the school district?
As far as that, I have a lot of questions about that because the one thing I don't want to do want to support is programs that separate this block of students. This is a part of equity inclusion. If you're this, well, you don't quite fit. If you're that, you don't quite fit. I think there needs to be a broad perspective to respect all of them, all kids, no matter what. The problem I have is that, when we look at something like the LGBTQ, somebody asked me, well, how do you feel about them? I said, there's human beings and students just like everyone else. The problem I have with it is we got to stop separating people. Martin Luther King wanted to bring us together. And somehow we've come into society where now we're breaking up into different groups. And I think that's hurting us. If we teach kids from the lowest level, respect everyone, including their religious and beliefs, because that's where a problem comes in at, when people who just don't believe in something and then we demonize them. You're not a part of this group, and that's not right. We have to start at the lowest level, teach them, even if it's those programs that do it, and not push stuff on them, but say, you're a human being, these are your peers, these are your countrymen, respect it, and do that all the way up, and I don't think we would have a problem.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about policies that you might support based on race and ethnicity? We know we're not teaching certain things in schools when it comes to race and ethnicity, LGBTQ plus, religion, some of those things that you've named. What is your stance on policies to either support curriculum or support policies that make these kids feel safe and seen?
Okay, well, first of all, everybody has to feel safe. And LGBTQ, I keep hearing that come out, but the question I'm asking is, what about everybody else? And again, I'm not going to get into the narrative of picking these groups, but everybody has, too many times our kids get left behind because they might not agree with that. They might not agree with the Christian-led coalition. And then what we're doing is we're elevating groups over each other. That I would not to happen, don't want to happen. Do not elevate kids over one another and say, we're in this special group, but then you have a Muslim to come in and they're looking at him and he might not feel wanted or needed, Buddhist or anything. And the reason why I touched the religious aspect, because you have an influx of people coming into the country and we have to deal with that. And they're from different levels, different religions, different cultures, and that might be offensive to them. I'm not sure if you saw what happened in Dearborn, Michigan. Those men weren't tolerating that. They said you would not push this on our kids. Now, whether it was, I'm not sure how deep it was, but we have to understand, if we don't start creating policies where everybody's on one equal line, we're going to lose a lot of people. We're going to continue to have division.
Thank you. So the next few questions seem to speak really to the heart of areas that you feel comfortable tackling. I read your bio, so I look forward to having a thoughtful conversation on our next couple of questions. Let's talk money. How do you anticipate, and you talked a little bit about it, I'd love to hear a little bit more, how addressing the budget deficits, and you said like go in there and look back at what's been done on the past, but this is really impacting our schools.
Right, well first, everything is generated, the budget and money, that's the top of everything. It's driven by everything. Some people said, well Reginald, why are you're talking about budget and monies? No. When you look at teachers, money. When you look at transportation, money. Classroom, curriculum, everything is driven by money. So one of the things that I would want to do is do a statewide forensic audit and really dig down for the last 4 years of where money went at first. Because you can't begin to fix it if you're doing the same thing over and over. So first of all, you need to find out where you are. Do a statewide audit, independent, not to get anybody in trouble, but to find out what are we doing? Are we overspending in contracts? Are we overspending in maintenance? That's been a big problem. Get down to that and then start using that money and making wiser decisions in contracting. That's going to be a big one, to see if we can't start, if I can be unorthodox, cut the fat off of a lot of things, just trim it off. That's one thing to do. Then to find out why are we in I think it's a 1.4 billion deficit. We got to find out how we got there first and then start tackling it. Now, this trickles right down into the school closures because of the money situation. Yes. This is going to be a very, very difficult situation, but not impossible. But that would be the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is find out where the money is and where we are now. And then I would go to the national level, Department of Education, and see what type of funding can we get to support the schools and try to get, to pay off some of this debt that we have. I mean, I'm pretty sure they have a lot of money up in Washington, D.C., and I'm sure we need to start tapping into that.
They're a little tight with it sometimes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Awesome, thank you. Let's talk about teacher retention and support. You alluded to this in the very beginning of our conversations. You shared that the school board really can't do more about teacher pay. What measures are you willing to take to propose an increase for support and an increase for retention of our top teachers in our school district?
Well, what I would do is I talked about a retention, recruitment, and retainer plan. As far as recruitment, we need to get the best teachers. We need to recruit all over the country. With that, take Try to get the legislature to approve more than $200 million to really create some incentive programs to bring teachers in, which includes, hey, we're going to pay for your home, your mortgage for 90 days. We're going to give you a $500 additional stipend for 6 months to bring you in under a 3 to 4 year contract. So you're going to retain that teacher, and it can be competitive because once they see that, teachers, maybe they'll come flocking in depending on how lucrative it is. To retain good teachers, I don't think they need to be left out, especially what we would see as tenured teachers. When they do these incentive programs, too many times, once they start messing with the money, as I can say it, and the teachers, instead of having a good, hefty pay, they're usually what? $25, $30 more on their check because of taxes and everything else. I think it needs to be a clear bonus that career teachers get, and that needs to be implemented rather than penny pinching a good healthy bonus like, I don't know, $2,000, $3,000 more a year. And the bottom line is money. We have to give them more money and incentive to retain good teachers and to recruit good teachers.
I could talk about teacher recruitment and retention for hours. I won't do that to you or anyone else listening. But I have recruited all over the state of Florida. I've recruited out of other states. And I can tell you that if you go to a Michigan, Ohio, places I used to try to recruit teachers from, there's a large number of colleges of education in some of those places. And you say we're going to compensate you at $42,000, $47,000 a year, they're going to stop the conversation right there.
Yes.
And so I heard you say you wish teachers could be paid more. In this role, how could you be an advocate for that to happen?
Well, again, it's a legislative process at the state level. I would be an advocate for it. Whatever programs to say, hey, I'm on the school board, Duval County, and our teachers are not paid well. Not even the ones coming in, as well as the ones that have been here a long time. We need to push the legislation, because as a school board representative, I don't think I can go out and just go, you have to be careful about those political lines. But I will push for better teacher pay through the legislative process to make it permanent. Not the incentive, because that goes away. Once the money runs out, we got to wait on
The next
to
one.
the next one. And I do not like that at all. And and I would encourage parents, teachers, everybody to get involved with their congressmen and say, hey, we're about education. And right now we're not doing very well, especially compared to the rest of the world and with other areas. And push your congresspeople, local, state, and say, pay attention to education, pay attention to education. They need to get paid better. They're going to bend after a while because they want your vote.
Yeah.
And they're going to work with you.
Thank you. Let's talk about kids' safety. Okay. How do you propose that we keep Duval Public Schools kids safe? And if you could address it from the perspective of aging buildings, which you did some, gun violence, which is something that parents are very concerned about, and investigating claims of inappropriate behavior in our school buildings.
Okay, I'm glad that's a good question, because safety is more than just external, people coming in school with guns. First of all, let me start from the top and be real quick. Our country is in a bad shape right now. Kids look at TV. They see all of this stuff. The video game industry is almost immune from any kind of responsibility. Hollywood is almost immune. Don't touch them, yet they're pushing it. Then they say, well, it's the parents. The parents have to watch out. They can't see everything. We have them for 7 hours a day, too. So we have to start adding pressure from that level. Everybody. Okay, now let's dive down right into the school. Rather than having the schools look like Rayford Prison with bars all over the place, I remember a time you walk right up to the school, they look like prisons now, the gates opening. I think we need to have a policy, and I talked to some police officers, of more external cameras with a person designated to see who's coming in the school. This is the physical security. Yeah. Instead of just having a person roaming around. You need that, but you need to know what's actually coming into the school with your cameras, with advanced cameras. That's something, and that way you don't have to have your schools always looking like a prison. Once they come into schools, I'm very much on the fence with teachers being armed. I don't agree with that. Too many things can happen with kids.
Yeah.
So I'm not in favor of that. I am in favor also of a robust police force. I would like to see the Duval County Sheriff's Department take charge, but that's $45-50 million out of the budget to do that. So that's a challenge. As far as the safety of the kids, when it comes to the well-being of our children, we know that we live in and this is, I'm just going to be transparent with you. We are in a sexually charged society that doesn't seem to want to slow down.
Yeah.
And now they're not going to talk to us. They want these children now. And they're going to do everything they can in their literature to push it. And as parents, as teachers, we have to watch out for that, because that is a part of their safety also, to save their minds. So you also need to vet teachers and staff, because they're still arresting people for what has happened. And people don't talk about it enough, what's happening in Duval County schools. We have to stay on top of it. Some people say, well, what, and I'm gonna go right into this. Some people say, well, you can't ban books. I've never talked about banning books. I said, get rid of inappropriate material. Because who's to say a teacher or a staff member doesn't say, hey, Johnny, come look at this book. This is good for you. And not saying a lot of them. You just have predators within our system. The kid doesn't know any better. They're scared. The teenager or whatever. Then it's years that pass by, and all of a sudden you find out this teacher's been doing this for 10, 15 years. How do we tackle that? We gotta vet teachers better. We have to watch the stuff that kids look at, because that's just exacerbating the situation. I got slapped for that. Well, Reggie, you can't do that. I said, listen, age appropriate. You just can't give it. Suppose you gave a child a book that says, Johnny, here's how to kill dad, and they had cartoon figures. Put this in his coffee because you're mad at him, and the kid does it, now you got a dead parent. And people think, Reg, that's over the top. No, it's not. Look at where we are as a society. It is not over the top. We have to look at everything in their safety. So we're looking at the physical security, we're looking at what we're teaching our kids, we have to vet teachers better, and if there is any talk of abuse of any kind, I'm not saying go in and beat the teacher, staff over the head, but go have a conversation to find out is anything valid through law enforcement. And if there is something really there, you have to pull that staff or that teacher out immediately, pending an investigation, not sit in the classroom for another 10 years. And then this is one thing that troubles me, and I have to put this out there. Out of everything that's happened, I haven't heard anyone says, what happened to the children? Yeah. Where are they at? And I think we're losing. I know Dr. Green left, and people were advocating for her, and Dr. Green did a good job on a lot of things, but nobody ever asked about the children. That really bothered me as a parent. Yeah. And I know that was another subject, but
no,
I'm pretty passionate
that.
about
it.
Mm-hmm.
We want to get to know you from, the perspective of the job yes. ahead of a candidate, mm-hmm. and also as a parent yes. and a person in the community. Mm-hmm. One last question. Mm-hmm. You have, the attention of your community here right now. Yes. When we look at what we need for District 5 school board, mm-hmm. why should the community vote for you?
Well, first of all, I'm homegrown, live right down the street, went here. I know the aspects of the community. I saw some of the buildings at Edward Waters College get built. Little guy, that tells you how old I am, I'm sorry. But I've seen it get built. I know the community. Some people say, well, Reggie, you've been in the military and you've been gone for 30 years. No, back and forth. I never lost my state residency, and I've been back and forth. I am a stakeholder also. I have a vested interest in the schools, and no one can question that. 4 girls, challenging girls, 2 sons, all of whom are successful. 3 have went in the military. Now I have grandchildren in the system. Now, I am an educator, worked in adult continuing education, work in jointly with the Department of Children and Families for child care assessment exams. I have operational experience, because as a school board representative, you have to be able to see the big picture. Everything, and that's what we did in the military, and I worked in special operations, pretty dangerous job. So that's what we did. I have the operational experience. I am homegrown and from here, a native of Jacksonville, and I have a vested interest in my community, a compassionate vested interest in it. I have knowledge in the schools. I have visited the schools. I mentor at some charter schools, again, work at the college, and I believe that we have to have someone with well-rounded experience. And here's the big one. I have been exposed to an entire diversity of people. I've been in Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, 2 tours in Afghanistan, Iraq, Desert Storm, Bosnia. And when you've been in these countries, you talk to a variety of people. The women, the culture, and guess what? We're starting to have that in America. You know, no matter what anybody thinks, we're having people and we have to deal with it. And you have to have someone who can actually look at things from that perspective in dealing with people. Now, I know we don't deal with them directly on the ground, but when you start to understand cultures and understand how people operate and understand what you have to do to the community, which is right here in District 5, if you have that knowledge, then it makes you a better representative, because you can see things from the business aspect, from the policy aspect, and from the community aspect. I'm from here, I know the entire community. That doesn't mean you can't serve because you're not here. I just believe I make a better fit because I have been here, because I know the school system, and because I have a thirst for protecting our children, including mine. Still got them in the system.
Awesome.
And if you want to get Reggie Blount angry, mess with the children and the elderly. You got a problem with me.
Vulnerable populations.
Yes, vulnerable populations.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.